Hello and welcome to We Are Nantucket. We are grateful to the Massachusetts Department of Education for their grant for the after-school programs and also to the Dreamland Theater Foundation. Who I am most grateful for are the students who have been doing the interviewing, learning the technique of interviews. I think the most important thing about this exercise and project is that the students learn to question and listen very carefully and ask follow-up questions of the adults, and they learn a lot of other people's experiences.
My name is Luke Shampoo. Today is January 7th, 2023, and today I have the honor of interviewing Michael Molinar.
Thanks for having me.
Could you tell me about how you got here?
I grew up outside of Detroit, which is a world away from Nantucket. And I'd worked at a Hilton hotel, and I'd won a trip to any Hilton hotel in the country for a weekend. And I chose the Waldorf Astoria in New York, where I met up with an uncle of mine who was the vice president of Merrill Lynch. And he said to me, do me a favor while you're here, just go on one job interview. I'm going to give you a ticket out of Detroit. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll give that a shot. And of course, I had the job before I even went to the interview. But I ended up working at the World Trade Center, 5 World Trade, 7th floor, low floor for a stockbroker, all was good. That worked out real well for a few years. And after that, I'd gone on vacation to Florida. And I wasn't really making good decisions in life, I will say. And a customer of mine from Florida, where I used to work, said to me, I was a jewelry salesman at the time, and she said, I never buy jewelry, and every time I come into the store, you sell me a piece of jewelry. Would you ever consider coming up to Nantucket and working for me? And I thought, gosh, Nantucket. I've never been to Rhode Island. That would be fun. I had no idea where it even was. So I came up to Nantucket for the summer. I think it was 1984. And I worked in a little store selling posters and stuff. And it didn't really pay very much. So at night, I attended bar at the Harbor House. Back in the old days when Walter Beinecke owned it, it was a world apart from the way that whole thing is now. And there was a new flower shop in town that started doing flowers for the Harbor House. Big, like ones like you never saw before. And I was like, who is making these? And it's called Flowers. It's at the boarding house, and they're looking for a driver a couple of days a week if you know of anybody. And I thought, well, I could read a map. I can figure. That would be a good way to see the island. Sounds like kind of fun. So I went over there and I talked to the guys, and it was a brand new flower shop. It was a partnership. It was about as big as this room we're in now, and it was an interior decorator named Gary Knight and a guy who knew a lot about flowers. His name was Merlin Branchek, and then they had a financer, a lady named Judy Miller, who was kind of the financer and gave the backing for this. And they were going to do a flower shop and an antique shop at the boarding house, and it was going to be very upscale, very fancy. And they started out, everything was great. They were all kind of socially connected, and they got all the good accounts in town. There was another flower shop here, but they were new and they were very popular. And in a matter of 90 days, they all got into a big fight, and they decided to close the store and quit. And I went back into work, and by then it was September, and there's orders on the board, and the phone's ringing, and they were like, don't even answer it. It's done. Flower shop's over. That's crazy. And I was like, this is just like a perfect-sized business for me. It kind of clicked for me that having a small flower shop in this wonderful little town, I could do this. I could make a flower arrangement. I know how they do it. I know where they go. I know the town. And I said to the lady that owned the building, Mrs. Miller, could I take over the flower shop? Could I rent the space for a year or so? And what do you think you'd want for that? Because I didn't have any money. And she said, honey, you don't have to pay me any rent. When I come up next summer, put a few flowers around my house. That's all I want to do. You have a good winter. And so I was kind of off and running. I got a year's start for free. It certainly was in the off season. It was quiet. There wasn't a lot of business, but I got to kind of know the business and learn some suppliers and kind of figure it out and get my feet wet and get rolling in the business without having to pay rent. And in Nantucket, that's kind of a big deal. You need like an angel to get you started. So it worked out really well. What I didn't know was I had to fill 56 containers every Thursday in her house. Yeah. So I learned very quickly it'd probably be easier just to write a check for rent. But I got going, and I did that actually for a few summers. And unfortunately, after a couple of years, she got sick and she died and the building sold, and I had to start paying like real rent, and it worked out really well, and I ended up taking more space at the boarding house, and I went from flowers and to gifts and to antiques and other things. And back then there weren't a lot of big weddings like there are now. Like now there's a whole wedding industry, and I like to think that we were kind of on the ground floor of that. And so we got known for doing these big weddings only because there was only a couple of people that even did flowers. And I hired a guy that used to be the florist at the Plaza Hotel in New York, and he actually worked for a year at the White House during the Ford administration. So we had a very good pedigree, and the guy is very talented. His name's Jack Bangs. He's really smart and talented and business-headed, and got us going and how to professionally run a good flower shop. And that took us to the next level. But by then, it was a few years later, it was like 1995 or 96, and I was paying almost, I think, like $78,000 in rent. It was like a lot of money, and I thought, business is great. I said to a friend of mine who was Bill Hurahan at the bank, you know, that sounds like a mortgage to me. And he said, go pick something out, we'll finance it. We moved to Chestnut Street, so it became Flowers on Chestnut. And we kind of rebranded ourselves, and that first year, business doubled from the year before. And we were kind of off and running. That was 1998. It's been a good run, and it's been good ever since. So that's how the short version of how I got to Nantucket and started in the flower business.
Yeah. I want to ask you about how you expanded your inventory and started selling gifts and antiques, but I had read that you went on trips and took time off to go explore the country and parts of Europe to go find these unique things to bring back to Nantucket and sell. Could you talk to me about that?
Well, I can. Sounds like you did your homework. That's good. The partnership from the original flower shop, they wanted to have a flower shop and an antique shop, and they used to go to London and the Cotswolds for a month and go shopping and send back container after container full of antiques. I knew enough that I could probably figure that out. Back then it was $99 one way to London. And British Air had a Wednesday flight at 8 o'clock in the morning. So by the time you get there, it was 7 o'clock in the evening. You get to your hotel, have dinner. It was 11 o'clock at night, and you could hit the ground running the next day. And I used to go to London once a month for the first year or so and just come back with a bunch of stuff from the flea markets there. I met some people that were saying that they had their representatives here in the States, and instead of going all the way to London, I could probably visit some antiques warehouses here in the country and start finding some other pieces and save myself going to London. But I started doing a little homework and finding antiques markets and where the gift shows were. And there was a big gift show in New York at the Jacob Javits Center that it was kind of new at the time. Then it got to be, you'd see everyone from Nantucket there. It got to be, we were all shopping from the same place. So that kind of got to be a drag. So I kind of figured, if I need to shop where not everyone else is shopping, we need to get some things that are unique. It was a good way to travel the country, do some shopping. Actually, I'm leaving tomorrow, but the show starts on Monday down south. And we're going to go to the gift show in Atlanta, and I've got a friend of mine and a truck, and we're going to go hit some antiques markets all down south there for a couple of weeks. It's nice to have some things in the shop that are found items.
Do you think that in finding all these wonderful things like gifts, antiques, making beautiful flowers, do you think that you've contributed to your community in a very important way?
Yeah, I would like to think I have. I think in a small town like this, a lot of people wear a lot of different hats. When I first kind of started out, there was this lady that came to me, and she said, her name was Kathy Klaus, and she said to me, I want to have a big fundraiser here for our local hospital. It's going to be $10,000 a table. We're going to have 25 tables, 250 people, and we're going to have the Boston Pops play at the beach. And we're going to have flower arrangements on every table, but I want you to donate them. are you in? And I was like, I could do that. 25 flower arrangements, yeah, count me in for that. And so I got involved with our hospital, and thankfully the timing was really good. And it worked out well. The Boston Pops, when it first started out, it was smaller than it is now, but that Pops concert was a few thousand people, and then it kind of expanded into almost 10,000 people one year, and they've kind of shrunk it down a little bit. But I definitely got involved in the community and some of the nonprofit things, as I think every business owner kind of has to. And my kind of chosen nonprofit was our hospital. I kind of care about mostly, I like to focus on healthcare for myself and healthcare for my pet. Like the MSPCA, back when that was a nonprofit.
Well, speaking of your business, I heard that you want Flowers on Chestnut to stay a flower shop after you retire. Is that true?
That is true. You did your homework. I'm proud of you. I've been in business, I think, 37 or 38 years now. Like the next chapter, I would like to move on and probably do something else while I'm still young enough to do something else. And I have a business or a building that is set up for a great flower business. And business is excellent. I like the idea of small town living. And so I would like my business and building to be a flower shop if we can find the right person to take over for me when it's time to retire.
Well, going back to the beginning, way before all this started, do you think being a florist was what you always wanted to do?
I will say that when I was younger, I remember going to a plant store back in Troy, Michigan, and thinking, I think I want to have my own plant shop. And I didn't really understand that a plant shop was a flower shop, but I think that was in my genes for some reason. And I remember when I worked in the World Trade Center, the guys would come around from the plant company and would take care of the plants and water them and all that. And I always remember thinking I should be doing that job instead of this job at the desk. So yeah, for some reason that was definitely a calling of mine.
I think that's wonderful. Now, what do you think is the most important thing in your life right now?
Health. I think if you don't have your health, I think that you're going to have a problem. I think good health is the most important thing in my life right now. That you need to take care of yourself, and as long as you're healthy, I think you got everything.
Yeah. Well, I know you've done a lot of wonderful things in your life, and it seems like it was all sunshine and rainbows, but could you tell me what has been the most challenging time in your life?
A few years ago, I had a episode with cancer, and they discovered a big old tumor the size of a football in my stomach. And that was a challenging time. It's all been cleared up. They took it out. I'm healthy. I'm cancer-free. I'm not on chemo. That was a big challenge, I will say. And keeping my business running. And it happened in the summer of 2020 during COVID, and between COVID and cancer and high season in Nantucket. That was a very challenging time. And I got through that, and the rest of this, I think, is all kind of gravy.
Yeah, that does not sound nice. Well, I'm glad to see that you're doing okay now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Could be journalism.
Yeah. It was nice talking to you.
Good talking to you. Thank you very much.